Hi guys, this is the next part of What If Gohan Never Stopped Training. I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to ensure you never miss another exciting story. Krillin knew he should not do it. He would probably die as a result, but he couldn't resist. When everyone had returned with dinner in hand, he realized that Piccolo and Gohan were still in the crater, but they were sleeping. He had never caught Piccolo sleeping before in all of the years he had known him. Gesturing to his partners in crime Videl, Arasa, and Sharpener, they all threw their leaf bowl full of water down onto their unsuspecting victims and then ran for their lives. Roaring in rage, Piccolo and Gohan leapt out of the crater after their tormentors. Gohan grabbed Krillin and Sharpener. Piccolo snagged Videl and Arasa. Soaring high into the sky with them, the helpless prisoners did the only thing they could, beg for mercy. Piccolo growled and bared his fangs. It was bad enough he had actually fallen asleep, but to have someone witness it was unacceptable. They look like they need a bath, don't they, Piccolo? Gohan's answer was a sadistic chuckle. Sharpener fainted then, from either the chuckle or the height they had attained. His last thought before he lost consciousness was that he never should have listened to Coach because now he was going to die. Diving towards the ground, all four pranksters found themselves sopping wet, in the middle of the stream. Spluttering and trying to get the water out of her eyes, Videl turned on Krillin. You said it would be fine. Well, they didn't kill us, so see, fine. Screeching at him, Videl helped Arasa out of the water and went to go dry out. Sharpener tried to get out of the water but kept slipping on the rocks. Pointing at Krillin, he kept repeating, it was his idea. Laughing sheepishly, Krillin was backing away from them slowly. Gohan was still in his Super Saiyan form, as his control over it was so exquisite he had never left it after the spar. Piccolo's eye kept twitching. Growling one last time, Piccolo reached down and grabbed Krillin by his gi. Krillin opened his mouth to plead, beg, anything, when Piccolo suddenly tossed Krillin, catapulting him into the sky. Feel better. Warn me next time before you pull me into something as undignified as sleep. Piccolo demanded. Chuckling in reply, Gohan watched Krillin stop his ascent and fly back down. Though he noticed Krillin landed on the far side of the camp instead of beside them. In all honesty, he was rather pissed off at Krillin. It was exceedingly rare for Piccolo to relax that much. After his little stunt, it would probably be years before Piccolo allowed himself to relax like that again. Mr. Sun. A mangled shout drew his attention. Mr. Hayek was standing in front of them furiously working his mouth, but seemed incapable of further speech. Yes sir. Gohan said politely. He wasn't exactly sure what the problem was, but he was learning that things that were okay in his world, were unacceptable to the rest of the world. What happened to Coach Krillin? If he falls from that height he'll die. The man was beside himself. He had become accustomed to both this new Gohan and his sensei, but murder would not be permitted. Shaking his head, Gohan merely pointed to Krillin who was now waiting in line for his dinner. But, how? He was. Mr. Hayek stuttered pointing at the sky and back to Krillin. Deciding to take pity on his teacher, Gohan led him to the dinner line, patting his shoulder. Gohan did not join him in the line. Rather than consume everything the group had worked so hard to gather, Gohan had been in the habit of getting everyone settled and then hunting down his own dinner. Moreover, it gave him a few extra moments of peace throughout the day. Looking around, he was very proud of how well everyone had adapted. So far, none had tried to slack off or get out of contributing their fair share. The cohesiveness of the group was fantastic, each member playing to his or her strengths. Several of the girls had even made a privacy screen by the stream for bathing out of several long sticks and the same kind of large leaves he had used to bundle and carry the fruit that first morning. If anyone had tried to tell him Monday night that this group would do this well, he would have died laughing. They had all definitely surprised him. Powering down to his base form, Gohan waved goodbye to Krillin and went in search of his own meal. Piccolo waited quietly for Gohan to finish his dinner. He was used to the kids' need to eat after their years together, though he was still grateful he only required water. Isolated as they were from the rest of the group, even Piccolo's sensitive ears could only pick up noises that belonged to the desert. The silence was comfortable and neither felt the need to break it. Content as a cat, Gohan floated up to Piccolo's level and slid into meditation. Despite staying linked for the past week, both looked forward to their meditation sessions. The quality of the connection was deeper, richer, and more profound. Time passed by unnoticed and the sunset went unappreciated. What's this? Piccolo had come across one of Gohan's thoughts he had not seen before, Something about his third level transformation. Ah, that. The third level of the Super Saiyan form is useless to me as it stands. The sheer amount of energy it takes to sustain it defeats the entire purpose of a more powerful form. Piccolo grunted in agreement. He had seen that for himself. Okay. I know you, kid. What are you trying to do? I think I can channel the energy in a different way, preventing the extreme energy drain. Dad's Kaioken technique, the one he learned from King Kai, focused his energy without exhausting him, allowing him access to more power. I haven't tried it yet, but if I am right, by using the same basic principle I could actually use all of that power without all of the consequences. And if you are wrong? If I am wrong, then the intense concentration of energy will kill me. Piccolo gasped at the pain that calm statement caused. The thought of Gohan dying was completely unacceptable to him. Sorry, Piccolo. Gohan had felt the pain and panic he had caused with his musings. That's why that thought was buried in the back of my mind. It would be too irresponsible to attempt. I am not sure there will ever be an appropriate time to try it. Piccolo growled, embarrassed by his undisciplined reaction. Hey Gohan. Piccolo. Krillin shouted, flying to them at breakneck speeds. Are you guys okay? What happened? Krillin looked panic-stricken. Gohan opened his eyes, shaking away the morbid thoughts they had stumbled into. Krillin, don't take this the wrong way, but, what on earth are you talking about? Piccolo merely watched silently. He had not yet forgiven Krillin for his earlier prank. Krillin looked speechless for a moment. King Kai has been trying to reach you. Your dad wanted to check in with you, but when he tried talking to you through King Kai, they couldn't do it. He tried Piccolo next since he could feel that you were close to one another, but he could not get through to Piccolo either. They just contacted me and sent me to find you. We thought something horrible had happened. Gohan sat quietly for a moment, considering everything Krillin had just said. King Kai had been able to speak to them in the past with no problems. That meant something had recently changed to block him. Then it hit him. He and Piccolo were fully linked, that might be preventing the Kai from getting through. He just needed to test it. Piccolo nodded slightly, having heard Gohan's thought process. Okay Krillin, do me a favor, tell King Kai to try to talk to me right now. Gohan watched as Krillin closed his eyes in concentration and waited. Nothing. Did you hear him? Krillin asked hopefully. No, tell him to try again. Ready to block the link Piccolo. Gohan and Piccolo simultaneously blocked their mental link to see if the Kai could then get through. Gohan immediately heard King Kai shouting in his mind. But he was in too much pain to pay attention. As soon as he had blocked Piccolo from his mind, a searing pain ripped through him. Looking over, he saw his friend struggling as well. They quickly re-linked, easing the pain. What in the hell was that? Piccolo groaned. They had always been able to open and close the mental link that went along with their bond at will. Shielding had never brought any pain or discomfort. I don't know. Gohan answered, almost nauseated from the intense pain. Krillin stood back watching them wide-eyed. One moment they had been fine, the next, both had doubled over in pain. Krillin's attention was snapped back to King Kai. King Kai wants you to head up to the lookout. With Dende's help you will be able to physically hear him, since telepathically does not appear to be an option. Gohan nodded, still holding a hand to his head. Slowly the two rose into the air and turned towards the lookout. Upon arriving, Dende looked them over, frantically touching them to reassure himself. King Kai had already filled him in and the young Kami was very concerned. Piccolo and Gohan were his closest friends. Piccolo growled in annoyance, he did not like to be touched. Okay fellas, can you hear me? King Kai's voice seemed to echo from above them. Yes King Kai, we can all hear you, Dende answered. Gohan, Piccolo, do either of you know why you cannot be reached psychically? Gohan shot Piccolo a look, silently asking his permission to explain. Neither one had shared the depth of their bond with anyone. Piccolo nodded, not happy about it, but accepting the necessity. Bracing himself, Gohan explained, yes King Kai, we know what happened, but not why it happened. You probably know that Piccolo and I have always had a bond. It formed back when he first trained me. We always knew where the other was and could speak telepathically if we needed to. Gohan paused for a moment. He resented having to explain how and why it had changed. Yes, I remember, King Kai replied, even though he was dead at the time, Piccolo could sense when you were in trouble on Namek. It is called imprinting. Namekian parents form that particular bond with their newly hatched children in order to protect them. But that does not explain what is blocking others from your mind. Well, after Cell, it changed. Gohan stated reluctantly. Changed how? King Kai asked sharply. It became more. When we are linked, we can hear, see and feel each other's thoughts and emotions. This is very important. What exactly were you doing when it changed, Gohan? We were meditating. I was having a hard time after Dad died. Piccolo connected to me through our original bond, he was helping me. After our bond changed, we were only fully opening the link during meditation. However, this week we have left it open at all times. When we blocked it a little while ago, I could hear you, but there was intense pain. As soon as we re-linked, the pain faded. That has never been a problem in the past. King Kai was silent for several moments before speaking once more. I think I know what happened, but it shouldn't be possible. He hesitated. His voice was tentative. Spit it out, old man. Piccolo demanded. You no longer share an imprint bond. That actually fades in its intensity as the child grows into adulthood. If I am right, somehow the two of you, at least partially, have fused. Your bodies are separate, but from what you described, your minds, your very essence, have joined. The shocked silence reverberated across the lookout. Shaking himself, Piccolo snarled, I think you have been dead for too long, Kai, it's caused brain damage. That's King Kai to you, Piccolo, the Kai snapped. But why would fusing make us unable to hear you telepathically? Gohan wondered. Saiyans and Namex are both telepathic species. Most likely, when one of you is subjected to an outside psychic force, the other's telepathic abilities kick in, blocking the intruder. I thought when Namex fused, the other person's mind was completely absorbed. So how are we still independent? Gohan was trying to wrap his brain around the entire concept. Most likely, you each have enough psychic power to retain independent thought, though you both have probably taken on some of the other's traits. King Kai mused. Gohan looked at Piccolo. Really thinking about it, he realized how much some of Piccolo's behaviors, especially emotionally, mirrored his own in small ways. In the last week alone, Piccolo had willingly come to his school and spent time around people, not his favorite thing. But he had put Gohan's feelings ahead of his own discomfort. That was something he never would have considered doing when Gohan had first met him. Piccolo had even spared Krillin a few hours ago, letting him go without serious injury. Hey, don't even go there, kid, you're making me sound like milk toast. He was uncomfortable with Gohan's observations. Besides, you aren't exactly all sweetness and light anymore, I rubbed off on you. Piccolo was rather smug about that. That was completely true. The words completely without guile could no longer be used to describe him. In addition, Gohan was much more emotionally stable now than he had ever been as a child. He enjoyed and sought out meditation, had for several years now. Piccolo's trademark floating lotus position was as much his as Piccolo's. There were several other small changes in his personality as well, but he had just attributed them to growing up. King Kai, sir, how is it even possible for Gohan and Piccolo to be fused on any level? They aren't even the same species. Dende asked, interrupting their contemplation. In fact, Dende was shocked that they had ever been able to imprint in the first place. You are entirely correct, Dende. They never should have been able to fuse on any level. Even I do not know how they did it. As Piccolo is intimately acquainted with, Namekians have the ability to fuse with one another, but it has never been attempted outside of their race. The only reason Gohan and Piccolo's bodies did not fuse is probably due to their difference in species. Gohan, you said Piccolo used your original bond to connect to you, right? Yes, sir. Okay, Piccolo, what exactly were you thinking about when you did that? Piccolo scowled. There was no way he was sharing that. All he had been thinking about was pulling Gohan away from the terrifying darkness in his mind. He had instinctively known that if Gohan was consumed by it, he would never get his Gohan back. So Piccolo had put his friend in the only safe place he could. Into his own mind. Meanwhile, he had worked in Gohan's mind, filling it with his presence, trying to heal the damage that Goku's death and Gohan's own guilt had caused. Ah, I understand now. Gohan exclaimed, hearing Piccolo's thoughts on the matter. Okay, I get how it happened, but why can't we close the link now? Get what? Piccolo never answered. King Kai yelled. Oh, he answered, he just didn't answer you. Gohan retorted, proving that he had definitely taken on some of Piccolo's mannerisms. Now, why is it that we have been able to control our bond for years, but now we can't? King Kai huffed irritably. You would think being a king, he would get more respect. Most likely, by leaving the link open, you altered it. That kinda makes sense, sir. but not completely. We've left the link open for hours at a time meditating before. If it was just a question of time, logically, this should have happened years ago. So what else could have affected it? Gohan, King Kai said slowly, you may never know. You are in uncharted waters right now. So many things could have caused the change. This might just be the inevitable conclusion. Or it could be that it takes a specific amount of consecutive time to keep the link permanently open. Or maybe you drastically changed the frequency of its use and destabilized it. Gohan's head snapped up and Piccolo groaned. It's the Banshee's fault. She kept you trapped in that school or at home. We didn't link up for a few weeks. We have never done that before, we always connected on a daily basis. My temper. I could not keep my temper in check. I hadn't been able to properly meditate for a while. We were both feeling the effects of the link destabilizing. Then when we kept it open, it overcorrected. Probably to keep us from allowing it to get to that point again. Gohan and Piccolo raced from thought to thought, realizing what had happened. Poor Dende just looked confused, watching the expressions flit across their faces but unable to hear the underlying conversation. Okay, King Kai, we figured that out too. Do you think we will ever be able to control the link again? Gohan asked. What do you mean you figured it out? I can't hear your thoughts, you know. The Kai was getting very frustrated at being left out. Don't worry about it, Gohan said dismissively. Now, do you think we will be able to control the link again? Fine, don't share. I am trying to help, you know. He shouted irritably. Continuing a bit more calmly he said, there is a simple way to gauge whether or not you will be able to control it later. Try to close the link again. If it is easier than last time you will probably regain control at some point. Shrugging, the two once again tried to close the other from their mind. The result was both instantaneous and horrifying. It felt as though someone was trying to rip every bone from their bodies, while simultaneously pouring lie into their skulls. Linking back up, Gohan and Piccolo collapsed on the floor of the lookout, panting and writhing in the aftermath. What was worse, they had only closed the link for a split second. Well, that answered that. Gohan gasped through clenched teeth, trying not to retch. Okay King Kai, if we are fused in all but body, what happens if one of us dies? Piccolo asked, thinking back to their earlier conversation. Your minds and souls are irrevocably intertwined. The shock and trauma of having half of yourself ripped away. If one dies, you both do. After swearing Dende to silence, Gohan and Piccolo had returned to their camp to find Krillin waiting anxiously for them. You would think he would have known better than to ask Piccolo anything right then, but sometimes Krillin was severely lacking in common sense. After Piccolo knocked the ex-monk unconscious, making him feel better, Gohan had carried his limp form back to camp and put him to bed. Krillin did not ask again. Both felt amazingly calm as they settled in for the night. Then again, they had had the last 6 years to adjust. The only real change for them was that they had lost control over it. Gohan snorted quietly. He was not sure he would ever get used to thinking of his bond, his link, with Piccolo as a partial fusion. It just did not adequately describe it. After their little chat with King Kai, Dende had pleaded with them to tell the rest of the Z Warriors. While they might eventually have to explain at least part of it, neither felt the need right now. The only one Gohan was worried about was his mother. Tell the Banshee if you must, but realize that I am not ready to see King Yama yet. Gohan snorted in derision. If anyone told his mother, he would personally send the Baka responsible into the next dimension. Dismissing the thought for the moment, Gohan decided to get some sleep. They still had a week to go out here. The next 2 days passed by in a blur. Deciding that the group had finally mastered foraging and hunting, Gohan was allowing them to spend the mornings gathering food and relaxing. In the afternoon, he worked with them on wilderness-style first aid and navigation. Even some of the adults had never used a compass. Piccolo spent his mornings with Gohan now that he had them free and his afternoons in quiet meditation. Floating high above the desert, he considered how everything had changed. 6 years ago, hearing and feeling everything that went on in Gohan's head was maddening. He had been unable to concentrate and all he wanted was for the kid to learn some control. This felt different. Instead of the constant barrage of sheer noise, it reminded him of his waterfall. A relaxing and comforting sound he relied on. You sound like thunder to me. Gohan interjected. Thunder. When we first started training together, you would sometimes talk to me in the evening. I would fall asleep listening to you those nights. Your voice reminded me of thunder, the kind that rolls across the sky, not booming, but low and quiet, reverberating with power. After I went home, I loved it when it stormed. I would imagine that it was you talking to me. Gohan said nonchalantly. He was not embarrassed. Even if he was, there would be no point. All Piccolo had to do was look in the right place to see those memories anyway. You always were sentimental, he said gruffly. He knew Gohan could feel the warmth his words had caused, but that didn't mean he had to get mushy. Aren't you supposed to be busy? Gohan chuckled and turned his attention back to the task at hand. Gohan was pleased with the progress the group had made. Everyone could now splint a broken bone, bind a wound, and treat a snakebite with only the materials found around them. Added to that, almost everyone could accurately navigate using only a compass and a heading. Krillin was still having problems with that. He figured it was not a big deal since he could sense ki. Okay everyone, I think we are done for the day. Gohan announced, looking his charges over. They had been practicing binding pretend injuries on each other, so everyone had at least one body part wrapped up. Go get cleaned up and find something to eat. Mr. Hayek, can I talk to you for a moment please? The teacher nodded, awkwardly making his way over to the young man. He had a broken leg, and it was preventing him from moving easily. What can I do for you, Mr. Sun? Gohan motioned for him to sit and began unwrapping his leg for him. Well, I was hoping you could help me. I need some paper and something to write with for tomorrow's lesson, but I didn't bring any with me. Ah, that I can help with. Standing and stretching his stiff leg, he reached into a pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pencil. Old teacher's habit, I never seem to leave the house without something to write on. He said, blushing slightly. Thanks. This will make tomorrow so much easier. But, I might end up using all of the paper. Is that okay? Gohan, I did not get eaten by a dinosaur my first night out because of you. I think I can spare some paper for you. Chuckling softly, Mr. Hayek turned away. He was on foraging duty tonight. Gohan just stood there for a moment. He was not used to anyone outside of his family or the gang thanking him. He had just been doing what he had always done. An acknowledgement just felt weird. Shaking off the uncomfortable feeling, he rose into the sky to where Piccolo was waiting. The next day after lunch, Gohan gathered the group together just outside of the valley. They were giving him uneasy looks. He looked entirely too happy. That usually meant some impossible task that he would insist was simple. At his feet was what looked to be a large net made from sturdy vines. Okay, for today's activity, we are going to have some fun. I will be taking and dropping everyone off in your pairs a ways away from camp. You will be given a random list of injuries to treat in a task, such as making a weapon or gathering some food. He held up the small notebook with the lists. Your job is to first treat your injuries and then complete your task. You will need to use your compass and new navigation skills to make it back here in time for dinner. The prize this time will be a hot meal waiting for you. They cheered at that. Today was Tuesday, their 9th day in the wild, and the constant need to hunt or forage was beginning to wear them down. Gohan flew everyone out to their drop sites by having them sit on the net so he could carry them. Once all the groups were set, he hurried to get dinner started. While so far he had been unable to cook anything in a proper kitchen, Gohan was very good at cooking over a fire. Flying as quickly as he could, he gathered what he needed: a large rock for a bigger kettle, edible tubers, greens, herbs, and game meat. Adding a few stable key balls into the pot so it would cook evenly, he settled the massive batch of stew over the fire and went to check on everyone. After turning one group in the right direction, he flew over Krillin and Videl. They had actually managed to treat their injuries already, and he saw that they each carried a simple spear. What irritated him though was the fact that they did not have their compass out. Apparently, Krillin had sensed the key balls in dinner and was using that to guide them. That was not the point of the exercise. Next time, he would find a way to render Krillin's current method useless. After about 4 hours, the pairs started stumbling back into camp, exhausted. Hobbling to the pot, they filled their plates, starving. Gohan and Piccolo were floating a few hundred feet above the camp, watching. You've had something brewing in the back of your mind all day, kid. What are you planning on doing to them? Gohan guided Piccolo to his complete thought. Piccolo chuckled. He had wondered when the kid would get around to doing that. Gohan quietly crept through the camp in the pre-dawn darkness. Grabbing one pair at a time, he was slowly emptying the valley of its inhabitants. Allowing each pair only the time to grab their kits, he carried them off, abandoning them miles away. He saved Krillin and Videl for last. As soon as they were settled onto the net, Gohan struck Krillin at the base of his neck, knocking him out. Gohan, what did you do to him? Videl asked alarmed, trying to rouse the man. Don't worry about it, he will only be out for a little while, I did not hurt him. Now, hold on. With that, Gohan flew the pair away from the camp. Setting them down, he moved Krillin off the net, leaning him up against a rock. Turning to Videl, he gave her their instructions. Okay, the camp is due north from here. Your job is to get back in one piece. That's it, no crazy injuries, no having to bring back some random plant, just get back to camp. She really did not believe it would be that simple. Nothing Gohan had them do was that simple. Yes Videl, that's all you have to do. If you ever truly get lost in the wilderness, you will not stay in a single place. You would be trying to get out. Now, it should take you about 2 days or so to make it back from here. You will need to gather food as you go, keep each other safe, and set up camp twice. When Krillin wakes up, you can tell him he's not crazy, and yes, that means he will have to use the compass this time, oh, and no flying or else. Leaving her staring at him as though he had lost his mind, Gohan returned to camp and the waiting Piccolo. If you spend any time around the demon duo, you have to have a way to protect yourself. Their pranks were near legendary. After having his hair dyed purple to match his gi, Gohan had decided he needed a method to know if they were near him. He had figured out how to cast his own ki out like a net. Blanketing his room with it, if anyone entered, the disturbance would immediately wake him up. That saved him from whatever the evil duo had cooked up that time. As an added bonus, it also seemed to block them from being able to sense his ki. Curling into the familiar midair pose, Gohan cast his net over the entire area. Piccolo grunted in surprise. This was the first time he had been actively linked with Gohan. While he used this technique, he had not realized what all it entailed. It was extremely complex and stretched for miles in every direction. Gohan would know if anything moved within the area. Not only that, but Piccolo noted that it completely nullified his ability to sense the ki of the group. If he didn't know better, he would say that the two of them were the only living beings for miles. Deciding to take advantage of the quiet, Piccolo slid into meditation. This was the first time Gohan had blanketed an area this large. The drain on his energy was greater than he expected. However, with everyone so far flung, this was the only way to ensure their safety. Settling deeper into meditation, he kept silent watch over his charges. Krillin moaned, rubbing a hand to his head. Looking around, he saw that he and Videl were in the middle of nowhere. It was still dark out. Coach, you're awake. Videl hated the dark, and even though Gohan had only left a few minutes ago, she was relieved to have Krillin awake. Yeah, I'm awake. Where are we? We are wherever Gohan dumped us. He said we are about 2 days or so away from camp. We have to make it back to base from here. Okay, that's easy. Krillin said, reaching out with his senses, trying to feel the ki around them to get his bearings. There was nothing. He could not even feel Videl's ki. He looked around in alarm. Are you okay, coach? I don't know. I can't sense anything. That's never happened before. Oh, that might be what Gohan meant. He said to tell you that you aren't crazy and that yes, you will have to use the compass. He also said no flying, or else. Krillin groaned. Gohan did not make idle threats. He had been irritated with Krillin for not learning to use the compass. He had even warned him. Since he had been unconscious for the ride here, Krillin had no idea which way to go. Without using Gohan's lessons, they would not make it back. Scrubbing his face with his hands, he turned to Videl. They might as well get started. Gohan hovered high above the ground, slowly eating a piece of fruit. Piccolo had tossed it at him with a growled demand that he eat. The strain of maintaining such a large net was getting to him a bit. He had dumped everyone about 12 hours ago. It was now late afternoon. In those 12 hours, he had rescued 10 teams. 3 teams had almost drowned, 2 teams had run into T-Rexes, 1 team had tried to cross a ravine and nearly fallen to their deaths, another had disturbed a pterosaur's nest, and the other 3 teams had been heading in the wrong direction. Krillin and Videl had fallen into that last category. Feeling another tug on his net, Gohan raced to the west. Swooping under Sharpener, he caught him before he struck the ground. Shaking his head, he tried to figure out what Sharpener and his father had been thinking, trying to scale a cliff wall without proper gear. Thanks brains. Sharpener collapsed to the ground, his legs unable to support him. Flying up, Gohan rescued Mr. Pencil, who had not fallen yet, but was stuck. Shaking his head again, He asked them to go around next time. Nodding, the two men sat, trying to compose themselves. Gohan returned to the center of his net once more. Piccolo watched Gohan carefully. He was floating in deep meditation, keeping track of everyone and everything. So far, the kid had spent the day running after the humans, saving them from one near disaster after another. He knew Gohan had taught them better than that, but they were being careless. The fatigue he felt in Gohan's energy worried him. You need to take a break, kid. I know, but, arg. Gohan shot off again. He returned about 10 minutes later. I know I told them saber-toothed tigers were dangerous. I specifically remember that lesson. Piccolo raised a brow ridge. I know you did, I had to listen to it echoing around in my head. Sorry, Piccolo. Mr. Hayek had never been that close to one before. He said something about wanting to see its markings. You still need to take a break. Eat something more substantial, maybe take a nap. This is so much bigger than I thought it would be, Piccolo. I don't think I can hold it all and sleep. But I cannot leave them unattended either, the Bakas have proved that. Piccolo frowned, considering. Gohan had accepted responsibility for the welfare of the group. Therefore, he would drive himself into the ground to keep them safe, it was just his way. Even as linked as their minds were, Piccolo could not see everything Gohan did. What he had done was so intricate that not being the focus, Piccolo's view was slightly distorted, making it impossible for him to react quickly enough. Can you transfer the net to me? Maybe. Okay. Ready. Gohan gathered all of the delicate tendrils in his mind, and slid them along the link to Piccolo, carefully arranging them. Once he was sure Piccolo had it, he let go. Piccolo groaned, almost staggering under the load, he already felt drained. How had the kid maintained this all day? Are you okay, Piccolo? Gohan was already reaching to take the net back. I'll be fine, just go take care of yourself. Casting an appraising look at his dearest friend, Gohan nodded. Piccolo was right, he was tired. Lowering himself to the ground, he settled in for a nap. Piccolo slid as deeply into meditation as he could, trying to conserve his energy. At least the Bakas seemed to be behaving themselves. It felt as though most of them were stopping for the day, setting up camp. Suddenly Piccolo felt incredibly exhausted, so much, that he almost fell asleep. Flaring his ki, he jerked himself awake. Gohan started. Piccolo's energy had just flared violently for a moment, knocking him out of his semi-conscious state. Checking on him, he seemed okay. Shrugging, he tried to go back to sleep. As he did so, the same thing happened again. Piccolo was nearly pulled into sleep with him causing him to flare his ki, startling Gohan, and waking him up. This isn't working. Gohan groaned. No, it isn't. Piccolo's mental tone sounded strained. With Gohan's tired energy pulling at him and maintaining the net, he was rapidly exhausting. Gohan looked up sharply. Piccolo was not handling the load well. His energy was falling at a steady pace. Rising, he rejoined Piccolo. Not giving him a chance to protest, he reclaimed the net, relieving the Namek's burden. Piccolo was shaking. His jade skin was clammy, his eyes closed. Piccolo, talk to me. Gohan's panic was washing over him. Calm down, kid. Piccolo steadied himself, and looked at Gohan. How are you doing it? Gohan cocked his head to the side, silently questioning. How are you holding that monstrosity? Gohan's confusion was obvious. He did not know how he was holding it without it completely exhausting him, he just was. We need to figure that out sometime. You are going to need to let go of it for a while though and rest. I can't yet, Piccolo. If I do, I will not be able to. Gohan broke off, racing away again. Piccolo decided to let it ride for the moment. He would get Gohan to rest once the others fell asleep. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Next episode will be up soon.